Okay, so turns out Dutch baby is really not Dutch, that it's more German and it's for like Deutsch, sprechen die Deutsch. So anyway, but this recipe that we have is, hold on, I'm trying to get my little ribbon of people down. Okay, so Joellen Angel from Washington State gave me this recipe, and it she gave me about 5 recipes, and the others were very healthy recipes. It was like the point of those recipes was to be healthy, and this was the one that looked like the most fun. So that's the one I opted to make.
You put blueberries, powdered sugar.
Let's see. So this first one, and I do have this on the last slide as well. But they had 2 versions. They had the sweet and then they had the savory. So I decided to start with the sweet one. And I have the, this was granulated sugar and flour. And what seems to happen with me so often is that I find I don't really have the ingredients they called for. And in this case, it said milk. And we kind of use coconut milk instead. And so I thought, well, half and half would probably be more what the recipe was talking about. So I used half and half. And then really, it's just 4 eggs, 3/4 of a cup of flour, a little bit of sugar, some lemon zest. I used the fine part. And I actually had some lemon curd, which if you haven't had that before, it's like on the peanut butter and jelly aisle up on the top shelf, and it's wonderful. I was able to use my Magic Bullet blender. This was in a big cup, so I didn't have to get out my other blender, which I appreciated. And I did stir it up a little bit, so the flour wouldn't stick to the edge of the container. And that's it, just blended it blends very easily. And you can see the eggs still right there. That was before I blended it. So then it says to use a round skillet, a cast, and most people use like a cast iron skillet. And our son was coming over this particular day, and was going to return all of our cast iron skillets because he had used them for camping. And so he kept being delayed, and Jack and I were getting hungry. So we just decided I would use a different pan. And so I had a cast iron pan coated in enamel. And so I thought, well, surely that will work. And you do put the pan in the oven to melt the butter. And it's 4 tablespoons, so it's a lot of butter that you then swish around the pan. And this was the batter poured in. And so you can see the butter, like we don't use extra butter when we ate this. It had plenty. You put it at 425 for 17 minutes. And so you do take the pan with the butter in it to melt in the hot oven. So when you add your batter, it's already hot. And so this was how it started to cook. And I'd never made one before, so I thought, well, that's interesting. And this was even more interesting. And it does look sort of like, the mountains in creation. And so I was thinking, well, is this due to the size and shape of the pan? Or was it because I used half and half instead of milk? Or was it because I saved a fourth of the batter for when our son was going to arrive and I knew he would have a 4-inch tiny skillet? So I saved a little bit for him. So we can discuss this at the end about what I think, what really happened. But it looks beautiful. And when it came out, it does sort of deflate a bit. But this little like hole right here, that just formed on its own. And I was thinking that's probably because I had not used all the batter. That's my thinking for that. This is the lemon curd that I just kind of put on top, and then we added the blueberries and a little powdered sugar, and it was wonderful. It was light and fluffy and really delicious, kind of like a pancake, but not somehow. So our son came. This is a little 4-inch skillet, and I just thought, look at how it cooked. Perfectly round, no tectonic activity. And then as it cooked longer, the center sunk. And that's with it out. So he thoroughly enjoyed it. He didn't want any powdered sugar. Is there a question?
Could we see the recipe again, please?
Yeah, we'll get to it in just 1 minute. In fact, there it is. So, and I have the recipe again at the bottom of the slides. So our son loved them. And then, so I now had a 10-inch cast iron skillet, and it says to use a 10 to 12-inch. And I've talked to other people that have made these, and they didn't use cast iron. They just used whatever skillet that they normally use. It's kind of fun doing the cast iron, though. So for the savory, over here, you omit the sugar and the lemon zest in the batter. And so right before you put it in the oven, you sprinkle it with Parmesan cheese. I did add some, and it said to also put like fresh thyme and oregano. Well, I didn't have fresh either of those. So I put some other seasoning, which I'll show you. So this time, got the round pan. I went and bought whole milk instead of the half and half. And I thought, really, this is how we probably cook anyway. It's from the computer, not from the piece of paper. So I thought I would go ahead and include that in the picture. And I just used, grated Parmesan cheese from the grocery store. And again, used the little bullet. And it's just so easy to make. And so this is one of my favorite spice blends, and I just tossed it in with the flour. And here's a close-up of it. The Spice and Tea Exchange is actually a chain of like spice stores, and they're usually in touristy kind of places, and they take the name, like this says Grapevine, Texas. They have whatever little town they're a part of, to make it seem like it's very unique for that area. But this time I did stir it up a tiny bit with the flour so it wouldn't stick to because the other time it stuck to the edge of the container a little bit. So on this one, I wanted to prepare ahead of time because I was going to take the pan and get it hot in the oven and melt the butter. And so it's going to come out, the oven is preheated to 425, and I had a dish for the Parmesan, and I enlisted Jack's help because I needed to take pictures, and it was going to be beyond me to do the activity and the picture taking. So this is putting the butter in for about 3 minutes. It says 3 to 5, and it melted quickly. And you wanted the pan to be nice and hot. And while that was in the oven, I blended the mixture. And there's the pan on the counter ready to go. And there's Jack pouring in the batter. And you can see how it just pushes the butter out. And Jack's putting the cheese on. And we put it in the oven for 17 minutes. And it cooked round. Again, it didn't have the all the different upheavals. Oh, so you notice this doesn't have a tray underneath, but right here, butter was boiling over and going down. And so on the directions, I put and said, use a 12-inch skillet, not a 10. I think then it wouldn't have happened. But the oven was very smoky. So, a little good lesson to learn. And then I wasn't sure if that affected some of the cooking because it now had a cold pan underneath it. But, it ended up doing pretty well. And the other thing is you must warm your plates for this dish because it cools off so quickly if your dishes aren't at least don't have the chill on them from the winter. And so we took it out and it was so filling that Jack ate half of it and I could have a quarter and we had a quarter left. But you can see there's nothing stuck on the pan, no egg. It was very easy to clean up. And I was fixing some other things at the same time and we had some sauteed mushrooms. And so I just added the mushrooms to it, which was a really nice combination. And we couldn't decide. The savory was very good. And of course, so was the lemon with the blueberries. So and then Jack liked salsa with it. And so, and actually our son grew these red peppers. And so Jack enjoyed that. So we're back to the recipes. I think for the savory, you could add any kind of spices you want into it or herbs. And it was a little denser, I thought, than the sweet one that was in the rectangle. And so, what do you all think? Do you think the pan shape was the reason that it was so bumpy? Or Jack and I talked about the milk versus the half and half. And I said, I could have used like 1% milk. And it was an interesting conversation that actually 1% has more water in it than half and half or even regular milk, whole milk, but that's denser than the water is denser. Jack, you can chime in if I'm not explaining it well, but I just wondered if that's why the one with half and half seemed fluffier than the one with milk.
I think that your pan, because it's the round and the long, I think that's why it did it.
So you do think it needed the round shape to make it go up?
I think so. We were at a bed and breakfast one time, and the lady did individual round ones, like, I know, 4 to 6 inch little round ones. So
Uh-huh.
everybody got an individual one. And then she had 3 or 4 different toppings, like pie filling kind of thing that you would just put into it. So you could have whatever you preferred on it.
Ah, that's a good idea. Sure.
Then you ate it right out of that little dish that she had them in. So you didn't have to heat a
Oh,
pan or anything.
that would
Yeah.
keep it hot.
Yeah, it worked out very nice. I think there were 5 of us, because with my husband and I, and then there were some other people that also were staying there. But everybody got an individual little one, and whatever topping you like. But she used, like, like cherry pie filling, or she had some fresh fruit. She had different things that you could add to it. So you had whatever you liked.
That's a great idea. Really good idea. Well, I would recommend, I'll have the recipe on the blog, but I would recommend everyone make that because either sweet or savory, both of them were so easy to make. I mean, truly. And the cleanup was easy. And they were wonderful. So, Joellen, thank you so much for sharing that recipe. It's going to become a family favorite.
Could, when you started to do this, it went back because my husband and I owned a bed and breakfast in
Huh?
Lee for 11 years after
Oh,
we retired and bought a bed and breakfast. And
okay.
I used to make something like this, and I thought, oh, I had to go hunt because I have three recipe books that are bed and breakfast. It's upside down, I guess. I don't know. They're bed, and it took me a while to find it. This is a very simple recipe, and our guests, when they would come down, would go, oh my gosh, it's made in cake pans, in an 8-inch cake pan. You don't have to do any of that skillet business. That's why I wanted to find this, because it's so much fun, so easy to make. And it puffs up the same way, you take it out of the pan, and then I would put into it whatever fresh fruit was around. If it was blueberries, fresh blueberries, and then serve it with blueberry syrup. If it was strawberries,
Ah,
so I would do different, but it would be for breakfast in the morning. And it was just 3 eggs, a half cup of all-purpose flour, a half cup of milk, 3 tablespoons butter melted, and a half teaspoon of salt. And that you mixed it all together and put it in greased your to, you could make more if you wanted to make, double it. But
sure.
it was a favorite. I mean, people would come down and say, oh, because that's in our bed and breakfast, we always try to do things that you would not do at home.
Right. Well, and the house smells amazing
So I just
while
want
it's
to point that
cooking.
out if somebody is interested, because you don't have to go through the skillet, because I'm watching you do that and then put it in the oven. And I'm thinking, this is a one-shot deal. Just whip it up, put it in the oven, and that's it. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Thank you. Does anybody else have any thoughts about half and half versus milk?
Oh, it sounds good. I have to try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Technically, milk does weigh a tiny bit more than water, but not much. I mean, probably not enough to affect this. It's like milk is 8.6 pounds per gallon and water is 8.34 pounds per gallon. So they're just about the same. So I don't know that the density of the milk, 1%, 2% whole milk would really matter. Probably
Okay.
But I think it would matter. I think it would matter that you use milk rather than coconut or almond milk. Generally, when I try to bake with those, it doesn't come out.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.